Hello, I'm Mike Sneddon, that's Laurie Knox, and this is The Funny Thing About Football.
Oh dear me.
Don't really know what's happening, Jim. This is ridiculous.
Hello, and welcome to The Funny Thing About Football, the world's first and only podcast about football. I've done a bit of research, Laurie, and there are 4.6 million podcasts in the world these days, and not one of them's about football, so that's weird,
Phenomenal
isn't it?
stuff.
That's weird. So here we are. We're going to cover everything from the Premier League to Sunday League. We will talk about the Premier League. We will talk about the EFL. We will talk about non-league, as will become obvious why shortly. But we'll also be talking about stories of Sunday League, funny things that have happened in football, and so on. But I'm going to get straight into it with what I would call controversial opinions, or unpopular opinions, or I believe the youth of today, Laurie, call them hot takes. Right. We're going to start with those because it will explain a lot. All right. So my first one, this will probably trigger quite a lot of football fans. But I believe strongly that you can support more than one football club.
Go on, let's hear why.
Well, it seems, well, surprisingly, or not surprisingly, with that opinion, I do support more than one football club, and I don't have a problem with it. But it seems that a lot of people do, and there's an implication that if you support more than one football club, you don't love any of them as much as the person who only supports one. Okay? I would like to put forth an analogy. I've got 3 children. When I had one, I loved her with all my heart. When I had my second child, I didn't stop loving her as much as I did when I only had one. I know this is a difficult one for you to grasp because, I mean, you had one child for what must it have been, 10 minutes?
1 minute.
1 minute, right? So you had one child for 1 minute. So I'm not going to come to you to kind of to support me in that one because with your 1 minute of experience of being a parent of one child. But no, it's you don't stop loving them. I do have a very specific hierarchy of the teams I support, that's where the analogy of children falls down because you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to have very specific hierarchy in how much you love your kids. Well, certainly not admit it out loud anyway. But yes, I do have a hierarchy. So Bury Football Club, here and here, is I've been a supporter of Bury Football Club for 46 years. My dad took me along to watch Bury. And yeah, I've been a season ticket holder. I live in Ireland now, so I'm clearly not a season ticket holder anymore, but I have been a season ticket holder for many, many years at Bury, and they are always first and foremost. Next on the block was 22 years ago, Newcastle United. My wife grew up in the northeast, and when Bury were very, very bad in League Two, I just got bored of watching really crap football. Still watch the crap football, but I wanted to supplement it with some half-decent football, so some Premier League football. So I started watching Newcastle with her, and it was very easy to fall in love with Newcastle at the time because as a big England fan, Michael Owen and Alan Shearer were playing up front. So it's a dead easy thing to do that. And then the third one here is Dumbarton. Okay, so I'm a Dumbarton fan because I'm a shareholder in Dumbarton because my grandfather was a shareholder of Dumbarton, and when he died, we split his shares. There was only just enough shares that he owned to be able to split between 3 of us. So I'm a part shareholder, kind of a very small handful of shares in Dumbarton. So my Twitter bio explains it in thus, okay? Bury is the wife, Newcastle is the mistress that I like to, dabble a little bit with, but it doesn't stop me loving the wife. I just occasionally have a bit of fun with Newcastle. And Dumbarton's the sister. So, I mean, that's the best way I can explain it. But yeah, I am massively forthright in the view that you can support more than one football club.
See, if I was 14 years old, we go back to 14-year-old Laurie. First of all, it'd be a bit weird if you were doing a podcast with a 14-year-old, but I would absolutely be biting your head off right now. I'd be like, absolutely no way. I was a Sheffield Wednesday obsessed child, and anybody who supported more than one team, they can't be as passionate about that. However, I will say, as an older man, I kind of get it. When I lived in South Korea, I supported Doosan Bears baseball team. I really got into that as well. It wasn't like you say, it's not, it's like having children, right? It's not a case of loving one more than the other. So I don't know, maybe it's an age thing, but I'd be, certainly at school, I would have been very skeptical if somebody said, oh, I support A and B. But as an older person, I kind of get that. I think it's fair to say, as you get older, your passion for your football team kind of dulls quite a lot, right? When you're 13, 14 years old, it could make or break your week, right? A good result. Whereas now we've all got probably a lot more stuff going on in our lives that, we lose 1-0 to whoever. It doesn't really matter that much. We can get on with it. Whereas when you're 14, it's all you've got, maybe. So there we go. So I'm going to say, I agree with you now. I wouldn't have agreed with you 30 years ago.
Well, I mean, mate, when you support these three, you can't afford to have bad results ruin your week, because it's only very recently that Newcastle United have actually become good. So certainly up until about 4 or 5 years ago, I definitely couldn't have been described as a glory hunter. Supporting Bury, Newcastle and Dumbarton has filled my 50 years or 46 years as a football supporter with much more sadness than happiness. But yes, so you mentioned that you are a Sheffield United fan, and the more...
Oh, what?
Oh, shit. Oh, God. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us for the first and only ever episode of The Funny Thing About... Do you know, I was more paranoid about calling you Baz than getting your football team wrong. For those that don't know, I've been podcasting for 5 years with a good friend of mine called Baz, and I've been so paranoid about calling you Baz just because I'm in this environment that I've been in for 5 years with Baz, that I actually came up with I promised myself I would come up with something that would make it not as bad if I did call you Baz, right? Okay, so I'm right here, right now, having explained that I'm a big Bury Football Club fan, I will right here, right now promise that if I get to 5 occasions of calling you Baz by mistake, I will present one of these podcasts in a Bolton Wanderers shirt. Okay, so that's the pressure I need to make it not happen. So I will profusely apologise for calling you a Sheffield United fan. You are obviously a Sheffield Wednesday fan. But the point I was getting to was that the more astute of our listeners and viewers will notice that you do not have a Sheffield United fan.
A Sheffield accent.
Sheffield accent, that's where I was going. Now,
Indeed.
I've had one beer. This doesn't normally happen after one beer. But hey, who knows? Well,
Yeah.
to be fair, this is the first episode of the podcast. And every first episode of every podcast is the shittest one. It's the one that people look back on and go, oh my God, that was so bad. So it can only get better from here. So listen, I'm going to let you talk quickly. So you are a Sheffield Wednesday fan. You're not from Sheffield. Lots of people would suggest you have to support your local team. You don't. You go now.
Well, yeah, so I grew up on the Isle of Sheppey in Kent. For those of you who don't know, it's a small island with 3 prisons. The reason I support Sheffield Wednesday, obviously not the natural choice. I think everybody at my school supported probably Liverpool, maybe Arsenal. Manchester United weren't great in the early 80s, mid 80s. So, there weren't that many Manchester United fans around, but yeah, a couple of the London clubs too. But Yeah, I supported Chef Wednesday because they were the first team I completed in the Panini 85 sticker album. That's why I went for them. Obviously, absolutely terrible, terrible decision in hindsight. So
I
there's a
have to
pro tip.
applaud that for
Don't,
being a phenomenal reason to support a
don't
football club.
ever let your children go down that route. Absolutely. I mean, I say it could have been worse. Think about 85, then Oxford United. I mean, that's probably the only work. Maybe Luton, but anyway, yeah. So, probably picked like I don't know, probably the third worst option I could have done at the time. But there we go. Um, but anyway, yeah. So, do you have to support your local team? For me, I mean, I get the sentiment behind it. Basically, it's don't be a glory hunter. I think is more important, And actually, it's quite interesting because you'll see, like on Wednesday websites, chat room kind of things, people saying like, "No, you've got to support your hometown team," and their name will be something like Worksop Owl, and you're like, "Well, you're half an hour away from Sheffield." Oh yeah, but they're the closest professional. Like, is Worksop that different to Kent in terms of like, like how?
There's definitely a team in Worksop.
There definitely is,
Yeah.
yeah. But so yeah, for me, it's so yeah. I get the sentiment behind you must support your local team. For me, I think it needs to be refined a bit. Like, yeah, just don't be a glory hunter. If I remember having a friend growing up whose mum was from Liverpool. Again, this is Kent and the Isle of Sheppey. So he was a big Liverpool fan. So you know what, you can get away with that, right? You've got a family reason for it. You were kind of brought up that way. But when you just get now, you see kids in South London wearing their Manchester City shirts and like, no, I'm not having
Yeah.
that. Sorry, I'm not, that that's not on. So for me, yeah, I feel like you don't have to necessarily support your local team. I think it's a good thing to do, but if you don't, make sure you're not being a glory hunter.
Absolutely. And do you know what? There's a certain sense of pride in supporting a shit football club. In terms of, I remember, I don't wear football shirts anymore, hence the tracksuit top that I wear. I don't wear football shirts out and about anymore unless I am actually playing football. But back in the day, I would always, because the new Berry shirt would come out just in time for the summer holidays, usually. So, and I would love going abroad in my Berry shirt and walking around and people just looking and Berry. Because it's not like nobody's seeing you walking down the strip in Benidorm in a Berry shirt thinking he's bought that off one of those guys on the beach. Do you know what I mean? He's no idea he couldn't even name you two players of Berry. Do you know what I mean? At least they know you're an actual fan. So there is a certain pride in supporting a smaller shit football club. So yeah, I do. But yeah, clearly I support Newcastle and Dumbarton, so I have to wholeheartedly agree with the fact you don't have to support your local team. But I will agree with you when you say don't be a glory hunter. Once you've nailed your colours to the mast, you got to stick with it.
And on that subject, changing sports for a second, NFL is a sport I really enjoy watching. The one thing that stops me from getting really, really into it is that I don't actually have a team. I've tried supporting teams, but that just say, oh, okay, I'm going to support, Washington, and it's not, you don't really like, you've got no reason. So I really want a reason to, so I'm thinking about going over to the US over the next couple of months to, basically go and watch a couple of games of one team, and then I'll have then I'll be invested in that team. And this is so difficult for me to pick, right? Because I don't want to support a really good team because, like, where's the glory when they win? Okay, like Sheffield Steelers, we've got ice hockey tickets. Me and my daughter, we've got season tickets for next year. Sheffield Steelers are kind of like the Manchester City of the English Ice Hockey League, and it feels a bit dirty. It's just like if they win, like what, where's the glory? I want years of pain, like I did with Korean baseball, like I did with Sheffield Wednesday, or still am with Sheffield Wednesday. I want those years of pain for potentially winning something. So yeah, there we go. So whatever I'll do anyway, I won't be a glory hunter.
That sounds like, for those that don't know, Laurie is a big wheel in the social media circles. I think I can't think of a different way to describe it as that. So yeah, that sounds to me like a TikTok series or a YouTube series waiting to happen is you kind of wandering around the States looking for a home, just like, oh, could this be the one? And just waiting for that spark, visiting a number of different games and just waiting for that to happen.
The colours are important as well. Despite the fact that I'm 45, I'm not going to wear red. I'm not going to support a team. I just can't do it.
It's to your
Despite
credit.
being called a Sheffield United fan about 10 minutes earlier, I just can't bring
I
myself
can't
to
imagine
support a team
anybody
in
did
red.
that. Oh, but I mean, as a Sheffield Wednesday fan, very much a Sheffield Wednesday fan, even though you're having quite a shit season, it must warm the cockles of your heart to be 3 positions above Sheffield United.
You know what? 3 positions above them is good. We're just outside the relegation zone. It's one of those things. Stop the count, because for those of you who don't know, obviously Wednesday have had the worst summer, I think, of pretty much any team I've ever heard of. In terms of, at one point we only had 3 sides to the ground. The council taking away the safety certificate for the North Stand. Loads of players just walked out on free transfers because they weren't getting paid. Loads and loads of wild things to go on. And yeah, I mean, somehow we're out of the relegation zone. But probably the week before, I think, just after after 2 games, was it? I really, really liked it when we were 23rd and Sheffield United were 24th. And I think we actually had the same goal difference. I don't know if it was goals scored or I'm not sure what was going on, but that I just love the moral victory there. Mind the gap.
I actually saw that. And because people will wonder why we are starting a football podcast 2 to 3 weeks into the season. It is a stupid time to start a football podcast, and that's because Laurie was away on holiday, and then last week I had COVID. I mean, who knew that was still a thing?
Going retro.
I certainly wouldn't have known it was a thing unless my wife threw a test at me, because my mother-in-law found out she had it, and then she tested my son, and then told me to test. Anyway, I wouldn't have known, and by the time I did know, I was only 1 day off going about my business anyway, because I'd been ill for so long. But yeah, that's why we're starting now. But I did look at the league table last week, and I have the answer for you as to why Sheffield Wednesday were above Sheffield United in the league.
Go on.
It goes on points, which was obviously the same. Then it goes on goal difference, which was obviously the same. Then it goes on goals scored, which was obviously the same. And it's because you'd both only scored 1 goal, but Sheffield Wednesday scored theirs away from home. And that is the reason that at the time, and that is the reason. I remember now, I was devastated when I had to pull out of last week, because I'd researched that stat and I was so pleased with myself. So
I didn't know
I'm
that.
so
It's
happy
good to know.
that you've brought that up, because I completely forgot about that and I wouldn't have mentioned it. But yeah, it's because Sheffield Wednesday had scored 1 goal, but that was away from home, and Sheffield United scored 1 goal, but it was at home. Because I was kind of thinking, fucking hell, at some point that's just got to be that alphabetical order, hasn't it?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? But obviously it wasn't, because Wednesday were above United. But yeah, that's the reason why.
Good to know. Good to know.
Look, there you go, people. We are 20 minutes into our first episode, and I'm pretty confident that we have educated people on something new about football, because I certainly didn't know that, and you didn't know that either. So, I mean, if I didn't know it and you didn't know it, then nobody knew it, because we know everything about football, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Maybe. Anyway, so you're talking about the Sheffield Wednesday thing. It's something I wanted to talk about, because obviously Bury have been through a significant financial based issues. In the 2019, we weren't allowed to start the season because our owner at the time hadn't paid anybody, hadn't paid any debts, hadn't paid the players, hadn't paid the coaching staff, hadn't paid anyone. Stewards, local businesses who supplied catering, things like that. So we were kicked out of the Football League, and it looked like we were going to be gone forever after 120 odd years in the Football League. But those that don't know, we started again. It was quite rocky. There was a Bury AFC was started, and there was a load of people who didn't want to jump on that because they said it wasn't the real Bury, and so there was kind of two things going on at once. And then one side got the ground, and I don't know how you can buy the history, but that's a thing. And then there was a vote to merge, which didn't go. It got refused first, and then they had another vote, and then it did work. So now we are back, and we are in the Northern Premier League West, Division 1 West, which is the 8th tier of English football, having been promoted from the 9th tier last year. And with everything that's been going on recently with Morecambe, thankfully, in the week that we should have been recording but now are recording, that's all been sorted, which is brilliant because Morecambe were going through the same sort of thing. They were hoping a takeover would happen. Eventually it did, which is something that didn't happen for Bury in time. But it did happen, and I think they're called Punjabi Warriors. A group of Sikh businessmen have bought the team, and they have brought in the first Sikh manager of a professional football club into Morecambe. So obviously, the Twitter was of lots of people saying he's only got the job because he's Sikh, and this is a disgrace, blah blah blah, woke nonsense, and all this kind of stuff. Apparently, the right wing were quite up in arms about the whole thing. Anyway, the good news is that they had like 4 players or something, so they had to sign shitloads of players really quickly. And they, long story short, they had their first game since all of that was put to bed, and their ban on starting the season by the National League was lifted, and they scored a 95th minute winner to make it 2-1.
Phenomenal.
Which, unless I forget what the other team was, but I think it was Altrincham actually. Unless you are an Altrincham fan, the rest of the world who supports football is absolutely delighted that Morecambe scored that 95th minute winner. And are back on course, and they have basically avoided the potentially 6 to 7 years that Bury have got to go through climbing up the divisions again. So yeah, it's we'll not cover many serious things on this podcast, I don't think, but with you being a Sheffield Wednesday fan and everything that Sheffield Wednesday are going through, and by the way, at time of recording, we are half an hour after Sheffield Wednesday of League One have just beaten Leeds United of the Premier League on penalties in the Carabao Cup, which was phenomenal, brilliant, because Sheffield Wednesday have so few players that they couldn't risk their first team players in the Carabao Cup, so they put out basically a bunch of children, some of whom, this is really good, some of whom were so young they weren't allowed a sponsor on their chest because you're sponsored by a betting company. Now, that's a sign that your team are young when you're not allowed to have Mr. Vegas or whatever it is on the front of your shirt.
Yeah,
But
Will Granger, who came on, is 16 years old. I think, I think something like in the last round away to Bolton Wanderers, I think 6 of the players were making their debuts as well. You know, that's how thin we are on the squad. I think we've got 13 senior players, and even some of those senior players like 20, 21 years old. You know, so yeah, it's been an outrageous cup run already to get past two teams. I'll be on penalties for both, but. Yeah, it's backs to the wall kind of thing. I think it could be a fun season, but the thing is, there's a bit of a boycott on at Hillsborough. So if you're not a season ticket holder, you can't kind of look down upon if you actually go to the games.
Yeah, maybe you're just gonna have to sneak in. Yeah, because there was a boycott tonight, and the official supporters club had a watch along, didn't they? Because it was on TV. They were like, "Don't go. We'll all meet up at this pub." And there was footage of them at the end of the game, all jumping about on picnic tables in the beer garden. having made their point, but also the team having got through to the next round. But yeah, I do. I have followed this, obviously. Being a friend of yours, I'm following the whole Sheffield Wednesday situation, despite the fact I said Sheffield United before, like we've only just met. But I was delighted, obviously, as a Bury fan, that you beat Bolton in the previous round. And as a Newcastle fan, I would like to say you're welcome for the fact that Carl Darlow scored your goal and Sean Longstaff missed a penalty. So
Yeah, there we go.
All in all, I was delighted.
Did it go down as a Darlow own goal then?
It did in the end, yeah.
It did,
It
fair
deserved
enough.
to. It was shocking, to be fair.
It wouldn't have gone in without Darlow, so I suppose that's fair
No.
enough.
It was one of those, as a goalkeeper, he's not going to sleep for a few days because he's going to wake up in a cold sweat, like with his eyes wide open, seeing that football spinning across the line as it did. It's
Dominic Calvert-Lewin, missing from about 4 yards.
And then missing a penalty.
And then missing a penalty. A real shame for an ex-Sheffield United player for that to happen, you know.
On his debut for his new club,
yes,
Leeds United. One thing I wanted to do on this is, so we've done our hot takes, which we needed to get out of the way early doors to explain the 3 teams and the you're not supporting your local team. Your local team, by the way, I tried to figure this out. Would that have been Gillingham?
Well, Sheffield United, if we're going non-league, yeah, Gillingham, I say is the only professional team in Kent. Yeah. Charlton are part of the Kent FA, but I don't count London as Kent. That's so. Oh, God, yeah, no. Yeah, Gillingham based. Oh, I suppose Maidstone United actually. Growing up, they did get into the Football League for a couple of seasons. I think they got up in '89, and then they went out of business, didn't they? So
yeah. So. So Sheffield Wednesday in financial trouble, Bury financial trouble. Dumbarton this season, last season were docked 15 points for going into administration, and also another 5 this season for some reason. There's financial issues there. There's only this one that's got any money. There's only Newcastle that got any money, and they're just not allowed to spend it. So there you go. Right, so one of the things I wanted to go on to now is I wanted to, one of the features I think we're going to do is I'm going to call it Straight Red. So we're going to talk about something that, something about football that you want to show a straight red card, get rid of it, effectively a room 101 for football. Almost a changing room 101. I thought that was too cheesy to call it that. So, basically, just let's have a bitch about something we hate about football, because I know that, like, as 2 middle-aged football fans, I'm classing you as middle-aged because you've crossed the 40 boundary. So, as 2 middle-aged football fans, it would be normal for us to bitch about how, like, football's nowhere near as good as it used to be. It used to be good, but it's not about that, because we've had this conversation before that, like, when you look back at videos of football in, like, the 80s and 90s, the standard was awful, and there was a lot of violence. There was loads of stuff about football in the 80s and 90s that was shit. There was loads of really good stuff, and we got memories that we'll talk about in future episodes, but yeah, this isn't about binning stuff that is rubbish about football now because it's not as good as it used to be. But the thing that I am going to show a straight red is, obviously, which is quite close to my heart, is player striking. And with the whole Isak situation that's going on at the moment, and Johan Wissa, so from the other side, because Newcastle are trying to buy Johan Wissa, but I mean, players striking just drives me mad. I just think there are so many players who are and were looking to get a move and have done it properly. Like Eze. Okay, Eze wanted out of the club, romanced Spurs a little bit, and then told everybody that he's been an Arsenal fan for all his life and went to Arsenal. But he did it in the right way. He turned up for training. He did what he did. He was like, I want to move to a bigger club. If it happens, it happens. But players going on strike, I don't know that there's a lot of things about football that it seems like they want it to, that like quite often they'll go, oh, well, it's just a job and it's just so in all the other jobs in the world, it works like this, so that needs to work like that. So like the Bosman rule is like that, all that kind of stuff. So you've got to treat it like, employment law and all that kind of stuff. But if you're a player who is rubbish and you've got a 3.5, 4-year contract and you're playing really badly, if you perform that badly in a regular job, you'll get called in to your boss and it'll be like, right, we're going to have to put you on some kind of improvement program, a training program. And if you don't improve in the next 3 months, then you'll get a verbal warning, then it'll be a written warning, and then we can bin you off. But you can't do that in football. And equally, it seems that you can strike in football. So you can not turn up to training and not turn up to games, but still get paid £200,000 a week or whatever it is. Which is just nuts. And the other thing about it is that I heard a lot, particularly with the Isak thing. So Newcastle think he's worth 150 million, right? And if Wirtz is worth 110, who's to say? Because strikers are like hen's teeth at the moment. It's a very a good guaranteed 20-odd goals a year striker. Just they don't turn up anymore. So who's to say he's not worth 150? So if Newcastle want 150 million pounds and Liverpool come in and say we'll give you 110, and Newcastle go no, Isak goes right. I'm not playing again until you let me go to Liverpool. It's a bit like if somebody comes to your house and say your house is on the market for 600,000. Someone knocks on your door saying, "I'll give you 400,000." No, I want more than that. It's like, oh, well, I want your house. I really want your house. Why won't you give me your house for 400,000? It was like, and it was like, well, I'm not going to sell it for less than I think it's worth. And also, I don't have a house to move to, which is the same thing as Newcastle selling their only striker. So you get people like Troy Deeney and a lot of obviously Liverpool fans and stuff ringing up Talk Sport and on social media and that saying, why don't they just let Isak go? I was like, well, they will let him go if Liverpool. They've been very clear that if Liverpool offer £150 million and Newcastle sign 2 strikers, then he will go. But the whole thing I just think it's. There's lots of stuff about football that is brilliant, but I think this whole thing of players going on strike is just something that just needs to. There needs to be a solution. It just needs to get out of football.
I'm going to throw in something. I will say, a little disclaimer that the Sheffield Wednesday players went on strike. Our only pre-season friendly was away to Burnley, and our players went on strike. No, we're not playing. You don't pay us, we don't play. And that was a big thing why people thought, will we actually start the season? Because will they do that? But no, they have obviously started the season. So I feel like that was okay. But yeah, no, I agree with you in the case of the Van Hooijdonks of the world and what have you, going back to the 90s. That whole going in a huff and trying to get away, which is one of the reasons why Danny Rule, I think he was loved by the Sheffield Wednesday fans. And one of the reasons why, he would have left a hero if he'd just done, like you say, done the right thing. We had players like Michael Smith, like Josh Windass, who weren't getting paid. But they still turned up for training. They were there at the beginning of pre-season. They did all of that. And then when it was time, they put in their notice and their contracts are up, they walked out. And you know what? The fans don't really have any, ill feeling towards them. Yeah, we get it, right? You're not getting paid. The chairman's an idiot, blah, blah, blah. But with Danny Rule, like I say, the fact that he went AWOL for about 6 weeks, he just, like Barry Bannon was even texting him on the first day of training, like, why haven't you set anything up? What's going on here? And also a senior player, it was clearly Barry Bannon. So, and yeah, and in the end, he kind of did come back for a couple of days of training, which must have been really awkward. And the players then said, we don't really want him here anymore. And then he left. So it was because of that, he has gone from being like an absolute hero to like just another past manager, right? So I think it is a shame for them for their legacies as well. Okay, right, you know. He really wanted to get his move to Wolfsburg, or basically anyone that wasn't Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah.
I get that, but you have kind of tarnished your legacy a bit there.
100% agree that I need to qualify the player striking thing. Players striking to force a move out of the club, or managers doing the same thing.
Right.
Absolutely. Players players not turning up to a preseason friendly because they haven't been paid. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I get that, and I agree with it, and I would have done the same thing. But yeah, it's just, like you said, like tarnishing their legacy. That a month ago, Alexander Isak would have gone down in history as one of Newcastle's greatest ever players, literally because he was instrumental in the seasons that got Newcastle to qualify for the Champions League twice in 3 seasons, the first trophy for 70 odd years, and just to throw all that away to try and engineer a move. And I think it's one of these. I think partly to blame is one of the scourges of modern football, which is agents. Because I've heard a rumor that his agent is retiring in a year and wanted to force this through now. Because, I mean, Isak's still got 3 years left on his contract. So he's moaning that he's not. No, he was made promises that weren't. Like, you made a promise 6 years ago when you signed a 6-year, or 3 years ago when you signed a 6-year contract. That's a promise. You promised you would play for the football club for 6 years. But yeah, there are rumours that his agent wants to push this through so that he gets 15% of 150 million or whatever it is,
Right.
before he retires next year. So yeah, it just all, like you said about kind of ruining your legacy. Isak's done that in terms of he would have been an absolute. If he'd have just come in the summer and gone, I know Liverpool are interested, and I really want to go to Liverpool, and I'll wait around until they offer a good amount of money and you've got cover for me, but then I'm going. Absolutely everybody would have let him walk out of the door with a hero's goodbye, and he still would have got cheered every time he came back to Newcastle. But it's funny because he's basically threatening never to play for Newcastle again. So if this deal doesn't go through before the 1st of September, when the transfer window slams shut, as it does, then he's still refusing to play. And it's a World Cup year as well. So he's potentially going to risk playing for Sweden at the World Cup. And he's ruined his reputation with Newcastle fans. And, I mean, who's going to want to buy a player that will spend 6 months not playing football and refusing to play football? It strikes me as he's not being very, he's been poorly advised, I think. And I was looking at the odds of where he's going to be come the slamming shut of the transfer window. And at the moment, both staying at Newcastle and going to Liverpool is 10 to 11. So it's on a real knife edge as to where he's going to be, which I think is going to be really interesting what happens in the next week.
All right. Well, there we go. Like I say, Isak, from now, no matter what happens, even goes back to Newcastle, bags 25 goals this season. It's always going to be that little kind of question mark. It's always going to be that he's not, he's not the hero like Alan Shearer. He's not, he's not one of us.
Exactly. I mean, I think there is a route back here because Rooney did it, didn't he? Rooney said, I want to leave and all that, and then ended up staying at United and doing really well. But yeah, I think you're right. I think, like you say, if he ends up being back at Newcastle and gets integrated back into it, and I think his first couple of goals might not have the euphoria that they would have had. But if he scores 25 goals, it'd be like, yeah, 25 goals, brilliant. But he will leave having scored another 25 goals from Newcastle for Newcastle. But I don't think people would put him up there in the top 5 Newcastle players ever. Where they, if he'd have just said, "Look, Liverpool are interested," if he'd have gone on the right terms, I think people still would have held him in quite high regard.
Struggled at Hillsborough in the FA Cup, though, didn't he?
Well, sorry?
Struggled at Hillsborough in the FA Cup, didn't he?
There you go. It's not about the FA Cup, it's about the Carabao. Everyone knows the Carabao is more important.
Well, we do tonight.
We absolutely do tonight. Look at that. There's a stumbled across agreement there by accident. So have you got anything that you want to give a straight red, that you would that pisses you off about football?
I think there have been many really, really good rule changes, like over the last decade or two. I don't know, things like you always used to have to take the kickoff. You always have to go forward and then back. It was such a pointless little thing that everybody did. Getting rid of that, things like that. That just, even if it's just a second or half a second, just like basically, ultimately you're in the business of entertainment. Well, one thing that I feel like, maybe this is a bit of a controversial one, but when players, like when they're 1-0 up in the last minute and they're shepherding the ball and they kind of like leave the ball in the corner and they just use their weight to stop that, I feel like that shouldn't be allowed. I feel like you're just obstructing the play. I feel like it is obstruction, right? If you're making no attempt to play the ball. I mean, ultimately, you could bring on like a WWE wrestler, right? Just get the ball in the corner. And then, like most players got no chance of getting near the ball. I don't know. I just feel like it's not entertaining. It's boring when the last couple of minutes where how much more exciting would it be if it's end to end? But instead you just got Callum Patterson with the ball in the corner holding people off and eating up time. I feel like in terms of the entertainment value of the game, that should start being called as a foul.
I mean, it used to be, didn't it? The obstruction used to be a thing, and I think I agree in. If you take the ball into the corner and you've got your foot on it and you're kind of rolling it backwards and you're kind of shielding the ball, I think that's okay. But what you get is like if the ball the ball might go into the corner and you've got someone there and the first person who gets there for some reason has the right, without touching the ball, to stop the other person getting to it. It's like, who made you in charge? Do you know what I mean? Right. That happens a lot. You see that? It is like someone will run down there and they get there first and they're allowed to do that. But I think that's right. I think it's. I think if you're in full control of the ball, like you're actively doing something with the ball and you're holding people off, then I think that's fine. There's a skill involved in that. But yeah, like you say, just taking it to the centre, so the quadrant down by the corner flag. And just trying to just not do anything with the ball and just standing in the way, and because invariably what happens there is the player just gets annoyed and tries to get the ball, and these days you're not allowed to tackle from behind even if you get the ball and it's pure clean getting the ball, you'll get a yellow card maybe. So yeah,
and obviously when it's your team, you love it. But I'm just saying, from the entertainment perspective, if you're looking at football as a product and thinking about how we're trying to make it a bit more exciting, quite often you end up with like 2 minutes, what should be the most exciting 2 minutes of the game, just being killed off. And I think, so for me, if you want to be a bit more exciting, that's one rule you should bring in.
And that's very good, and I wholeheartedly agree. Although, I will admit that in the Carabao Cup final, when it was getting squeaky bum time because Newcastle had conceded a goal and it was only 2-1, that last 3 minutes was the finest 3 minutes of football that I saw last season. It was just winding up and baiting Scousers by keeping hold of the ball and then whining about it. So, right, we are up to 45 minutes, Laurie. And excitingly, I haven't called you Baz all night. I did do something far worse. I called you a Sheffield United fan. So I'm sure you'd rather me call you Baz many, many times than call you a Sheffield United fan, and I do apologise for that again. But yes, so we're up to the 45 minutes, so we are now into added time. What I want to do each week on added time is I just want to have a little like preview of what's coming up this weekend, and then we will kind of recap next week. So I have the list of games that we have this weekend for our respective teams. And obviously, I'm being greedy by having 75% of those teams. But yes, first up, and the most important one is Kai Evans is going back to his former club. He's actually, and this is Bury. Bury are playing Nantwich Town on Saturday. And I didn't even realise that Kai Evans, I forgot that Kai Evans played for Nantwich Town until I went on their website to have a look at what's going on this weekend. And he's still listed as one of their players. So I presume he's still got his picture on there. You click on the names, the players, and it's still there with his picture on there. So I presume he used to play for Nantwich Town, and that is Bury. Bury have had a not great start to the season, based on that, bearing in mind that last season Bury scored over 150 goals, and we scored 7 and 8 and lots. And one of our first games this season, we played South Liverpool in the FA Cup extra preliminary or whatever it's called, and scored 6. But yeah, we haven't scored for 2.5 games, so that is a big one. And we're playing Nantwich Town, who I found out that their nickname is the Dabbers, which
The what?
the Dabbers, Dabbers, which they must have a bingo hall in Nantwich, is the only thing that I can think of. I've no idea why you would be called the Dabbers. So that's Bury. And then Dumbarton are playing what I will call the deduction derby, in that Dumbarton started the season on -5 points, and they're playing Edinburgh City, who started the season on -15 points. So it's a crunch match up in Dumbarton this
The
weekend.
race to 0.
Dumbarton are up above that. Dumbarton have got
are
5
they?
points already. Dumbarton have won 3 games and drawn 1, and are now on 5 points. So
Well done, Dumbarton.
that's it. Edinburgh City have started well as well. They have won 2, drawn 1. So they are now on -8 points. So it's quite an interesting dynamic there. What I'm calling the deduction derby.
Most Wednesday fans are expecting a point deduction coming soon, and given how we don't really have any players, a few people have speculated that there could be a chance that we end the season on negative points, which should be something to look forward to. Get in the record books at least.
I think with Sheffield Wednesday, it's one of those cases where it's things have got so bad. It's just like if we're still a thing next season, we'll take it. We don't mind what division we're in. It's a bit like Bury got promoted in May 2019, and we were put in the fixture lists for League One. And then the first game got postponed, the second game got postponed, then we got kicked out of the league, and they played with a 23 team division that season. So yeah, I think if Sheffield Wednesday is still a thing next season, I think that's okay. So just ride it out and be happy that that's still a thing. So Newcastle this weekend are playing in what it's probably a bit too early to call it the Sean Longstaff derby, but Newcastle are away at Leeds.
Anyone can beat Leeds. You'll be fine.
Anyone can beat Leeds. Well, anyone can draw with Leeds. Yes, having 2 ex-Newcastle players having put Sheffield Wednesday through to the next round of the Carabao Cup are now playing Leeds. They're now playing Newcastle next week. So that's going to be an interesting one, seeing as one of my friends from the golf club is an avid Leeds fan as well. So bit of spice on that one. But yeah, one of the interesting things for Newcastle fans, and I say interested in inverted commas, is that clearly Isak probably won't be there. Will Asula is definitely not good enough because we've been playing Anthony Gordon ahead of him, who's not a striker. And Anthony Gordon got a 3-match ban for taking Virgil van Dijk's sock off in quite an aggressive manner on Monday night. So I think, Alan Shearer might be getting a call up for Saturday. Also, Joe Linton's injured and Tonali's injured, so I think I might be getting a call up as well. And then, right, so on to one you actually care about, Laurie. One that I'm calling the Avine Derby. And you, as a man of words, will understand what that means. In that it's the Owls versus the Swans.
Indeed it is.
It's the Sheffield Wednesday against Swansea. Will you be going to that game?
I will not. No, like I say, it's kind of frowned upon if you're not a season ticket holder, because by the time we realise how deep in the shit that we are, season tickets have already gone out. So there's still about 20,000 season ticket holders there, but people aren't buying beer in the stadium. You saw like the North Stand, which is usually pretty full for the League Cup games. I think they had about 20 people in it tonight.
Yeah.
Is that
the one with his name in it?
Yes.
That's just him taking the piss now, isn't it? It's like, well, if you don't turn up, it'll say my name. It was funny tonight on the TV when they were saying like, they have the toss up as to which end they're going to take the penalties at. I said, will it be the end with the Leeds fans or the end with no fans? And it was the end with no fans.
When Barry Bannon scored his penalty, he did the shush, which I thought was a good...
To nobody. We'll have to cover this another time because we run out of time, but I'm going to have to start a campaign that Barry Bannon needs to get the Clippers out, mate. The boy's living a lie. He either needs to go to Turkey or get the Clippers to it.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were... he does need to do something with that. But the man deserves a statue at Hills without a shadow of a doubt. Hopefully he doesn't get one under the current regime, because with finances it's probably going to be made out of paper mache. But absolute Wednesday legend.
Well, if it is made out of paper mache, it'll take about 3 pieces of wool to replicate his barnet. So, right. So that is your first episode of The Funny Thing About Football. I've been Mike Sneddon. He's been Laurie Knox. This has been The Funny Thing About Football. You're not watching anymore.